Let's do this. And most of the folks here know a lot about PFAS, and so this is kind of under that assumption. I didn't want to start from the beginning and disrespect everybody, but feel free to stop me. And I didn't put the little thing in to make this thing work. Feel free to stop me and let me know if you have any questions, and I will do my best to answer them. Hold on one second. This we don't need anymore. Okay. Let him hook up. Maybe he's not going to hook up. We'll just do it that way. All right, so PFAS, we're going to just kind of provide, thank you, Marissa, a little bit of basics, and then we're going to move on. So technical support, Marissa Blackburn, thank you. So PFAS, per and polyfluoroalkyl alkyl substances, man-made, discovered in 1934, branded. One of them, was a conglomerate of them were branded as Teflon, and then it sort of boomed, right? But back then in the 40s and 50s, the scientists themselves at DuPont and at 3M, the primary producers of these things, were telling their bosses in the 1950s that these things were dangerous. In the 1950s. So just keep that in mind. And then what happened was we put them in all these materials and out into the marketplace. So, they're in paint, they're in makeup, they're in fast food packaging, they're in your pizza boxes. There's a gentleman from the EPA who tells me, please don't forget to talk about popcorn. Don't buy popcorn in a bag and stick it in the microwave and eat that, because that whole inside of that lining is PFAS coated, so the popcorn doesn't stick to it. And pizza boxes, fast food wrappers, your Big Mac, it's sitting in a puddle of PFAS. Cameras, paint, firefighting gear, firefighting foam, makeup, right? So there's no labeling requirements. My children wear mascara that's waterproof. If it's waterproof, it's got PFAS in it. Lipstick, most of your foundations that you put on your face, lipsticks, these things are ubiquitous across the globe, and they contain PFAS. This is kind of a confusing slide, but it shows just the beginning, and then all of these things that became from these primary pieces of PFAS. All of these things, electronics, medical devices. Currently, we're fighting with ChemWars because they're claiming that they need to produce more PFAS at Fayetteville Works to support green energy. Yes. So they're using them in batteries to support green energy. So on the left here, I was at a conference not too long ago where the sociologist was talking about essential uses. In Europe, they're doing a lot of stuff on essential uses. They're trying to remove PFAS from things that aren't essential and claiming these essential uses. The military has a whole document, it's almost 30 pages that I read, of essential uses for PFAS. We want to shift the narrative. This sociologist said this in a good way. They might be essential uses, but is it essential that PFAS is in it? And that's what we need to be shifting to. We're smart people. We can find technology to do the things we want so our egg doesn't stick to our pan. For crying out loud, don't use Teflon pans. Just get a nice cast iron and be on with your life. A story about Teflon real fast. When they started marketing those pans, there was a little note that said, don't cook around your pet birds.
Your birds, but not yourself.
Exactly. So that, and then the strategy needs to change, as Ty mentioned, and as was highlighted in the Rock Hill film by Janice. These aren't the solutions. Filtration is not the solution, right? That carbon that in Ty's filter and in the Sweeney plant that's providing the water for Cape Fear Public Utility Authority, that's carbon they're using. The PFAS runs through it. Then it becomes spent. As time goes on, the carbon doesn't do its job. The PFAS breaks through. They take that carbon, they ship it to New York, where they burn it. And this is going to happen across the country because of a recent federal law requiring utilities to do this. So we're going to have truckloads and truckloads of PFAS-tainted carbon crisscrossing across our country to then be burned, to be cleaned, to be reused. That's not the solution. Yeah, that's not the solution, right? So we need to stop making the stuff. That's it. We need to stop making this stuff. And then, we need to figure out what these health outcomes are, and we need to provide people with their due. So here's a little bit of the basics on the health outcomes. This is all due to the C8 study in Parkersburg, West Virginia. We haven't yet gotten a good epidemiological study in our region. We sued the EPA for this. We lost earlier this year. We're trying a different route. We lost because the chemical companies are so powerful, right? And the chemical companies are running our government. We had to fight the EPA. Why are we fighting the EPA whose mission is the same as ours? Because the EPA is aligned with the legislature, which is aligned with the corporate interests, right? So thyroid disease, you see on the top it says high certainty, that's the straight line. Lower certainty is the jagged lines. There's a heck of a lot more than just this. It's just that they wait for years and years and years of science to call something high certainty. So thyroid disease, increased cholesterol levels, liver damage, kidney cancer, testicular cancer, reduced response to vaccines, which was a big deal during COVID, delayed mammary gland development, lower birth weight. Those are all high certainty. That was about a 15-year health study on that. The rest of them are basically certain, but they call them low certainty because of science. And this is something, the first time I've shared this slide, and this is kind of something we're going to be shifting to more outreach on, and Ty's story kind of sheds light on this. We talk a lot about PFAS in the drinking water here in Wilmington because we are a drinking water contaminated community. Our exposure to PFAS is primarily our drinking water. But for the rest of the country, it's primarily the diet. That's this red one. This is a community where the drinking water is less contaminated. That's the rest of the world. And that's claim, this science is saying that it's your diet that's really doing to us. We're on the left there with the blue, where our water is our primary, and then the food is the smaller piece of that pie. This is a study, over on the left you'll see the researchers. Ping Meng led this study with support from Detlef Knappe and Owen Duckworth. This was about PFAS in food. They tested blackberries and kale and blueberries. And they found in the group of PFAS that they sampled, 10 were detected in at least 10% of the produce sampled. On the left I kind of was proud of myself because it looks like a little food pyramid. But it's soil, water, pesticides, food packaging, sludge fields, animal exposure. Like if you eat animals, you're eating animals that have eaten PFAS. And things like we haven't talked about, we haven't figured this out yet. We want to get Detlef Knappe to sample. This is a region with high industrial animal agriculture. Upriver, lots of concentrated animal feeding operations. The largest, Smithfield is the largest slaughterhouse in the world. 37,000 pigs are killed every day there. And they use Cape Fear River water for that processing. They use Cape Fear River water to package that pork. And so those pieces of meat are sitting in piles of water that have PFAS in them. But all of those things on the left are things that PFAS are in. PFAS are in pesticides. Most of the communities in the world, generally speaking, are not eating organic food. So you're eating food with pesticides. So pesticides have PFAS, the soil has PFAS, the water has PFAS, the packaging that you're going to eat that food in has PFAS, sludge fields that people spray on agricultural fields, the waste from wastewater treatment plants has PFAS, and then animal exposure. So obviously our food is contaminated. This was shocking when she presented this data. So comparing the food in this study to water, based on an adult drinking 2 liters of water today with 10 nanograms per liter of Gen X, one of the primary PFAS in our water, which is the Teflon replacement chemical. This is how they made this equivalency to blackberries. And so what I put over there was 1 serving of blackberries is considered to be 150 grams. So she's claiming this is the unsafe level for blackberries. So you eat a handful of blackberries, you're over the limit. So this is just a little bit of an update, and I realize this slide is kind of hard to understand. Don't look at all those numbers, it's fine, it's just background. But this is a little bit of an update on the private well sampling under the consent order. Again, Fayetteville area, they started since 2019 sampling, so that number is a lot larger. The lower Cape Fear includes New Hanover County, Brunswick County, Pender, and Columbus counties. Sampling the wells since 2022. I put these big asterisks here. So that number on the bottom, 10,132 and 1,711 for the lower Cape Fear, are the numbers of people that have wells that are contaminated enough to get protections under the consent order. But you saw from Janice's film and Ty's film that there are cracks in this system, right? I, for one, and I'll show you a piece that you can take action on later in this slides, have been advocating for every well owner to get protection from Chemours that is not an under-sink system. We have folks in this audience here who are dealing with this garbage. Under-sink systems are not enough. They don't cover your produce, for instance, if you grow a garden. They don't cover your swimming pool if you do that. They don't cover your shower, your dishwasher, your fridge if you've got water and ice coming out of there. That's not going to get fixed by an under-sink system. And that's not okay. And that shouldn't be on anybody's responsibility to figure out how to make that work. But our consent order provides these under-sink systems. That's where it says RO, reverse osmosis. GAC is the granular activated carbon whole house system. The consent order is not strong enough on this. When it was written, our lawyers had to negotiate with Chemours and DEQ. They were both fighting us every step of the way. 13 PFAS is not enough to be sampling. They should be sampling for all the PFAS. There should be any PFAS found should get you a whole house system or a hookup to municipal. Yeah. And we've been saying, we have a petition for that. But this is why I put these asterisks. So 10,132 people are getting protections, but that should be well higher, because that means they've only sampled for one of those 13. We know, because of the consent order, that there are 257 unknown PFAS in our water from Chemours alone. 257 plus the 100 that we know of, that we can count and can provide concentrations for. So we have at least 350 PFAS, and we're sampling for 13 in the wells. It's not enough. And then we're providing these systems that are not enough either. So we have a petition for that, but that's the update on the numbers, which is devastating as it is. But then to know that they're much, much higher. Here's an update on the first federal PFAS regulation ever in existence was passed. It's called an MCL, maximum contamination limit. What it does is at these levels, for these chemicals on the left, it requires utilities to filter for these chemicals. And if they hit these numbers on this right side, then they have to filter the water. So they have to sample for these, and then they have to filter the water if they hit them. This is great, right? This is cool. But this was 26 years, and I checked in with the lawyer, Rob Bilott, who is famous for taking down DuPont. He's the gentleman who the film Dark Waters is based on. We've been working with Rob Bilott over the years. And I talked to him about this to get clarity on this number 26, because I read it somewhere. He verified the EPA had very good, clear evidence 26 years ago of the dangers of PFAS. We can say that they knew 50 years ago when the scientists were telling the companies themselves, but they had EPA science at their door 26 years ago. So why are we waiting 26 years for the first ever federal law on PFAS? And then two, it doesn't hold polluters accountable. This is going after utilities, which is what? Going after who? It's going after ratepayers and taxpayers, because the taxpayers are paying for this. Not Chemours, not DuPont, not 3M. And then from my perspective, right, this incentivizes more PFAS production. When we keep talking about filtration, all we're doing is giving these companies more room to grow more, make more, because we're going to filter it out at the end. And so that's not enough for me. It's good. It will bring people clean water. That's good. But in the back of it, at the bottom of it, it's not the right answer, and there needs to be a hell of a lot more done. Excuse my language. This is just a little bit update on some good news. The state of North Carolina has been added into this firefighter cancer cohort study. Most of you all know I have two brothers that are firefighters. One of them died of brain cancer in 2019. PFAS has been directly linked to brain cancer, for instance, but also firefighting foams are made with PFAS. Firefighters are wearing PFAS in their gear. PFAS is burning from homes that they're inhaling when they're fighting fires. So firefighters are a highly exposed community. So I'm really grateful. I'm part of an advisory committee to this study that just started this year. There's a national study that North Carolina is now a part of, and we're going to be sampling firefighters and following them for 30 years. So that's just a little positive news. That's going to be led by Dr. Heather Stapleton on the right there from Duke. Okay, fish consumption advisory. This was issued July 2023. You can see the map on the left there of where this fish consumption advisory covers. And on the right is what it says, which is the most stringent fish consumption advisory yet. What it says is that women of childbearing age, which I don't know why they put 15 to 44, so when you get your period to 44-ish, pregnant women, nursing mothers, and children, American shad, blue catfish, channel catfish, no more than 1 per year. For bluegill, flathead catfish, largemouth bass, striped bass, and red ear, do not eat any of it. This is based on one PFAS, just PFOS, one type of PFAS they found in the fish. And then for all other individuals, no more than 7 meals per year or no more than 1 meal per year of these larger fish. And Kemp is our fish expert. I am not, but these small fish that they're listing in this advisory, it's not normal that they do that because these fish haven't really had time to eat a lot of things, and they're not up in the food chain, they're not ground feeders. So this is a big deal. And it covers that large portion. They claimed that they would be doing more sampling in the lower portions. They said they did. We're waiting for that advisory to come out. But that's a huge deal. And that's based on one PFAS. And again, we have at least 350 in this water. So we're moving on to Lear, which is relative to that fish consumption advisory in the middle to lower Cape Fear. On the northeast Cape Fear is a company called Lear Corporation. They make materials that for car seats, for seats that go in your automobiles and things like that. So these fabrics are coated in PFAS. In 2019, based on basically pressure from nonprofits, DEQ required sampling of a bunch of companies across the state. Lear was one of them. At that time, they found concentrations of up to 1,863 parts per trillion of combined PFAS. Just to take that, I know these numbers are hard to understand, but the PFOA and PFAS, two types of PFAS health advisory level, is less than 1. So that is 1,863. DEQ didn't do anything in 2019. We didn't even know that was happening because they didn't tell anybody. And then Kemp, my colleague in Riverkeeper, was up in the sky. He goes up in airplanes with some volunteers to monitor those agriculture fields, the CAFOs with the hogs and the chickens to check for violations. He was up there. He saw some foam coming out of the Lear Corporation's discharge. He went up and sampled it, and we found lots of PFAS in that result, right? Well, I mean, we knew if you go back to the DEQ's results, they're there. He told DEQ. He sent DEQ multiple Department of Environmental Quality, the state agency tasked with protecting human health and the environment from polluters. He sent them multiple emails. He didn't get anything from them. Then he notified Southern Environmental Law Center, who is our nonprofit legal authority who help basically tremendously in much of our work. They did a whole bunch of stuff. And what ended up happening was DEQ issued a draft permit for the Lear Corporation, a discharge permit, which they didn't have any PFAS limits. They knew the PFAS was coming out of it, and their draft permit called for monitoring. That's it. So what happened was we sent out a request for people to submit comments, and you guys all sent more than 1,000 emails to DEQ, and they heard it, and they were calling me, and they were like, why am I getting it? I was like, read them, please, you know? And, and then the EPA sent a letter to DEQ, which is not they didn't put it on letterhead. We keep asking them to put it on letterhead. They sent it, and it says the same thing that our comments said, that your comments said. They need to not just monitor. They need to require basically filtration on site, all these things, and then DEQ withdrew the permit. So that is a win. They pulled it back. They're reworking it. In the meantime, we're all waiting to see what's coming of it. A few weeks ago, Kemp and our intern Lauren, she's shifted out now, we're getting a new slate of interns, but they went and caught some fish. I told Kemp last night, I was putting a picture of her because she caught the biggest fish. He says he caught the most fish, so I told him I would share that. But that was a cute picture of her. So fish in the North, they sent this off to Gel Labs, which is the same lab that did the fish sampling tissue result or analysis, as was done for the state fish advisory level that I told you about. Same lab. The Northeast Cape Fear River downstream of Lear contained between 8 and 20 times more PFAS, the PFOS, in their tissue than the fish sampled in the main stem that prompted that fish consumption advisory. This is new information. We're basically sharing it. Kemp has shared it with folks in Duplin County. One woman activist up there whose children have been swimming and fishing in this river, and her family for years has become very strong advocate, and we've shared this with them, which we just got this information. And so this is kind of new, kind of a big deal, and we're working on that. So this is this action item I told you about. I have some little QR codes that take you to this petition. This is that, that's Ty, and this is that story that he was talking about, falling through the cracks. We have this petition that basically asks DEQ to make Chemours pay for everybody on a well with any indication of PFAS, no matter which kind, to get filtration paid for by this company. That's that. There's this other one relative to that piece I mentioned in the beginning. Chemours is ridiculously has a draft permit under review to expand PFAS production at Fayetteville Works, which is disgusting, right? They are claiming that they need to do this to support clean energy. Yeah. So this, that permit is currently waiting for what they call fate and transport analysis. The Chemours claim they didn't have to do it. This is basically figuring out, it's an air permit, figuring out how much PFAS and where it's going and how far away it's going. I learned this not too long ago. If it goes far away enough, they don't have to have it in their permit. So this is a whole bunch of nonsense. So this is a petition to tell Chemours, to tell DEQ to not issue that permit, plain and simple. So I'll give you the links for that. This is brand new this week. So our partner up at the Haw River Assembly, the Haw River and the Deep River meet to form the Cape Fear. So that's water that ends up coming down here eventually. Emily Sutton, who is the Haw River keeper, and Cape Fear River Watch and another group called Sustainable Sandhills are all part of this grant for the Gen X Health Exposure Study that's sampling people's blood. And part of that grant, we got some money for some water sampling for some community members. We have some of the folks here who have been tested because of that. Ty was one of those people as well. We were going out and sampling. Emily saw this strip of homes in her community that was in between a sludge field where they basically dump wastewater treated sludge and an old landfill. So she just approached them and asked if she could sample their water and found ridiculously high levels of PFAS in the tens of thousands of parts per trillion in this strip of community. So then through partners at the North Carolina Conservation Network, we have this coalition of PFAS nonprofit workers. They said, you know what, you can actually ask, a citizen can actually ask for this one process in regulating chemicals like this in groundwater, which is called IMAC, Interim Maximum Allowable Concentration, for a chemical. So they put together a letter and had this community sign it, asking for these IMACs, and DEQ actually responded. And so they just this week, September 4th, released the proposed IMACs for 8 PFAS in groundwater. This is statewide. This would be a statewide thing. And there is a comment period that's open. So please keep an eye on our Emails, we send out an email every other week. If you're not on that list, just go to caperiverwatch.org and click get on the mailing list, and it's very simple. It takes you 30 seconds. We send out an email every other week. We'll be providing a clear and easy way to make comment on this to the public, so keep an eye for that. The big news, this is the last piece for my presentation, is de-delegation. This word is weird, but we just filed, this is a quote giving a reason why we filed, a petition with the support of Southern Environmental Law Center, with the Haw River Assembly and Mountain True and Environmental Justice Community Action Network, EJ-CAN, which is Environmental Justice Community advocates up in Sampson County, and Mountain True, which is over in the Asheville area, a request to basically pull the permitting authority of the state away from it and give it back to EPA. And this is why. The North Carolina legislature has not only failed us in their response to the PFAS crisis, they have actively compounded the issue to the degree that their alliance with polluters has become so transparent it would be comical if it weren't so dangerous. That's a quote from a story last week. Here's the reason. Legislative-induced failure. This was a term that the SELC director put in a press release. The legislature, the North Carolina legislature, first off, let's talk. The North Carolina legislature has not passed one law on PFAS in 7 years. 0 laws. During that time, they have also continually underfunded the Department of Environmental Quality to the point that this entity, the only entity that we can rely on to protect us from polluting industries, has no money and no staff. And that is because the legislature wants it that way, because the legislature wants to support big businesses like Chemours and the Chamber of Commerce. So they've underfunded. They've stacked commissions. There's a commission called the Environmental Management Commission that needs to set the rules on standards like water quality limitations for PFAS. The legislature changed the control of that commission from a governor's appointed commission to a legislature appointed commission. They did that, and our governor sued and lost. So this commission is now stacked with polluter-friendly people who are literally idiots. I mean, on these calls, it is insane. The things that you hear people say. The last meeting, one of these gentlemen appointed by the legislature literally asked, has anyone died of PFAS?
Oh my goodness.
Do we not if we don't have that data, what are we even talking about? I mean, it is disgusting. And it is very blatant, their disrespect for women. The women at the DEQ, the scientists providing them with research on these calls, are very much talked to in a very different way than their fellow older white gentlemen men that they're talking to. And it is very blatant, and it is disgusting. But yeah, so this partisan commissioners of the legislatures, the SELC is calling them the super majority controlled Environmental Management Commission, are prioritizing the bank accounts of a few industrial polluters over the health, welfare, and financial well-being of thousands of real people. The EMC on the last meeting legitimately ended with almost a call for lobbying against the DEQ, a call for, they let 3 entities that don't want permits to speak at the Environmental Management Commission about how permits aren't good for them. They're posturing to take over DEQ's authority, and they've already basically done it by continuing to delay any sort of standards on PFAS in our water. The third piece that they've done is they've got this pseudo-judicial piece to our state and the way that things work in permitting. It's called the Office of Administrative Hearings. The Office of Administrative Hearing Judge is this gentleman named Vandervaart, who was the gentleman who back about, I don't remember, 12-something years ago, took over the DEQ, and that's when the DEQ changed from an agency tasked with protecting human health and the environment to an agency tasked with hand-holding corporate polluters to make the process seamless for them. This is the guy that was running the DEQ then, started this underfunding and started this new dynamic, and he's now the administrative judge that handles any cases that he wants. He can pick them. that come to this quasi judicial authority in the state, and he has been. He has been picking them. He's recently denied, basically granted the permission of Pittsboro, up in the Haw Basin, the town of Pittsboro, the city itself and the polluters didn't want limits on 1,4-dioxane, another chemical that's in our water that we can't filter out. And so they sued after the permit came out. And he picked that case and he gave it to the polluters. So they don't have that permit. And so this is happening throughout the process. So now we're stuck. We've got no regulatory authority because the DEQ is underfunding. The legislature isn't doing anything but making everything worse by stacking all of these things, underfunding these, and then the judicial power. So all these entities are working against us, and we've been struggling as a community and then as advocates trying to figure out what the hell to do, because there's all of the aspects of what is supposed to work in the system are broken in this state. The background of what this means is that EPA across the country gives the authority to states and entities like the DEQ to manage the National Pollution Discharge Elimination System. That's NPDES, that's permitting. So EPA gives that authority to a state entity like the DEQ. We're just like almost every other state. Our DEQ manages that. What they have to do, according to the Memorandum of Understanding, is that they have to protect North Carolina's to include participation from the public and enforce against any polluters that violate water qualities. That's the MOU. They're not doing any of that. So we have asked the EPA to take that authority back. So SELC, on behalf of Cape Fear River Watch, Haw River Assembly, EJCAN, and Mountain True, filed a petition asking EPA to take back North Carolina's authority to regulate water pollution because the state legislature is crippling its ability to protect waterways, drinking water sources, and communities. This is a really big deal. We don't want, for clarity, we don't want the EPA to take over our permitting authority. What happens in the election, we don't know. And if the EPA gets taken over by a different administration, that's dangerous. It's already not doing what it should be doing in a lot of ways. But these petitions, what the response is, historically, is that EPA, which they have 90 days to respond, comes in and fixes the problems. So they're going to come in, this is our expectation, and they're going to go to the legislature and the DEQ and say, here's all these problems, and we know the EPA agrees with these problems. And so this is the hope, that they're going to force the state to fix these things. And I mean, this is, the governor's on board with this, aware of it. The DEQ itself is on board and supportive of this because their hands are tied. We pick on the DEQ a lot, and we are rightful in that, but the DEQ doesn't have the funding or the support or the legislative backing to do their job. And so this was the only answer we could find. And so this is where we're going, and this is super big deal, so I just put giddy at the end because we've been saying giddy and then the two letters that come after that a lot of times that mean things that are bad words. So I put the little dashes. But this is a big deal, and we're really excited about it. It's unfortunate that this is what we're excited about, but that's where we are in the state. And that is the end of my presentation. So.